Plant tissues, as the name suggests, these are the tissues which would be found in the plants, and these plant tissues are divided into two main categories based on their ability to divide. So, if the cells are able to divide or not, based on this criteria, we are classifying the plant tissue into two types. The first one that we have is meristematic tissue. The next one that we have is permanent tissue. This means that meristematic tissues are those which could be divided, whereas the permanent tissues are those which are non-dividing. Let's just take a look at the flow chart of the plant tissues. So we know that this plant tissue has been classified into two major types, that is meristematic and permanent. Meristematic tissues are those tissues which are undifferentiated and dividing, whereas permanent tissues are those tissues which have lost their ability of division and they become differentiated to achieve a particular function. Now this meristematic tissue is also divided into three types. First one being apical, second one being intercalary, and third one being lateral meristem. This division is made on the basis of the location of the meristematic tissue. The permanent tissue is also being divided into three types. The first one is simple permanent, second one is complex permanent, and third one is special permanent tissue. Again, this simple permanent tissue, which is made up of the same type of cell, is divided into two parts based on its function. The first one is supporting and the second one is protection in nature. So when we talk about the supporting tissue, we have parenchyma, collenchyma and sclerenchyma. When we talk about the protective tissue, we have epidermis and cork. Moving on to the complex permanent tissue, this complex permanent tissue is made up of different types of cells and they are mostly conducting in nature and hence they are also called as vascular tissue. These tissues are of two types, xylem and phloem. Xylem is the one which is made up of four different types of cells, which are xylem tracheids, xylem fibers, xylem vessels, and xylem parenchyma. All these cells together do the conduction of water. Moving ahead, we have phloem. Phloem is responsible for conduction of food, and the phloem is made up of sieve tube or sieve element, phloem parenchyma, companion cell, and phloem fiber. The third special permanent tissue is also been divided into three types, which is lactiferous tissue, glandular tissue, and hydathoid tissues. We will be studying about all these types of plant tissue one by one in the coming slides. Moving ahead to meristematic tissues. Meristematic tissues are formed of young, compactly arranged, undifferentiated living cell. So we know this meristematic tissues needs to keep on dividing. So new cells are formed on continuously and hence they are young, compactly arranged and undifferentiated. The word undifferentiated means that they have not achieved any particular function. And these meristematic cells will keep on dividing and forming new cells throughout the life of the plant. And since they are dividing continuously, they would be responsible for the growth and development in the plant. Now, when we talk about the location of this meristematic tissue, you can see that it would be present in the growing region of plant, like this apex, the top portion. From here the plant is growing, so here you will be finding meristematic tissue, and all that yellow highlighted part which you can see, here you will be finding the meristematic tissues, and this meristematic tissue will be responsible for growth in this particular region. So we can see the location of meristematic tissue is tips of roots, tips of shoot, branches. They are also seen in leaf primordia and in the cambium. Now we can see the characteristics of meristematic tissue. So this meristematic tissues are going to be small, undifferentiated and thin walled. So here please observe in the case of the image, you can see that these are very small cells and their cell wall is very thin. And you can see this pink colored part, this is nothing but the nucleus. And they are very compactly arranged. So we cannot see any intercellular spaces between them. So here you can see being compactly arranged, intercellular spaces would be absent. Now, when we talk about the shape of the cells, it could be in a variety of shape. They may be spherical, they may be oval, polygonal or rectangular. But the main thing we need to remember is that its cell wall is very thin and is made up of cellulose. Now you can see that talking about its cytoplasm, the cytoplasm is dense and the vacuoles may either be absent or if they are present, they would be very small. Now, this nucleus is very prominent. You can see this nucleus is very prominent and it is located at the center of the cell. So, nucleus is prominent and centrally located, and the cells divide repeatedly throughout the life of plant, adding to its size. Since it is meristematic tissue, it will have the ability to divide, and as it is dividing, it would lead to the growth of the plant, resulting in adding to its size. Moving ahead, we have functions of meristematic tissues. So we know that this actively dividing meristematic tissue would be responsible for the growth of the plant, and this would include increase in height as well as the thickness of the plant, that is the width. So all different types of plant tissues will also be formed from this meristematic tissue itself. Next, you can see that these new cells are helping in the growth of plant, including its length as well as its thickness. It would be also responsible for development of new organs in plants like leaves, flowers, branches, roots, etc. All these things would be formed from the meristematic cells itself. The last thing is that this division of meristematic cells would be helpful for the plant to heal the injuries. For example, if any part of the plant undergoes certain injury or is damaged, the cells that would be repairing it would be the meristematic cells. Now we will be seeing about the types of meristematic tissue based on the location. So here in the image you can observe this tissue is called as the apical meristem since it is present at the tip or at the apex. Then you can see the next tissue which is intercalary meristem and then the lateral meristem. Let's take a look at them one by one. So based on their location in the plant body, we can classify this meristematic tissues into three types. The first one being apical meristem. Now the word apical is related to apex. That means the tip. So such a type of apical meristem would be found in the growing tips of the stem and root and the young leaves. And such type of meristem is also called as primary meristem. Now, since it is present at the tips or at the topmost point, it would be responsible for the growth and elongation of root and stem. That means the increase in the height or increase in the length of the plant would be brought about by this apical meristem. Moving ahead, we have the second type of meristem, which is called as intercalary meristem. The location of this intercalary meristem is base of the leaves and twigs and at the base of internode. So in the image you can see this part, this is the intercalary meristem, and this region, this is called as node. So between the internodes, you would be finding this intercalary meristem, which would be responsible for increase in the length of organs and branches, and it is also responsible for bending movement of twigs. Moving on to the next, We have lateral meristem. The lateral meristem is found as cambium in the vascular bundle of dicot stem and roots, and as cork cambium beneath the bark. So observe this image. So this first layer is called as bark, and beneath this we can see this layer. This is called as cambium, and because of this cambium, the width or the diameter of plant is going to increase. Here also we can see in the second image, this is the lateral meristem, which is responsible for increasing the diameter or girth of the plant. And this type of growth in which the thickness or the width of the plant is going to increase, such a growth is referred to as the secondary growth.